Welcome back to another episode of Pixel Peak. We're glad you could join us.
Because of current events, it looks like the rest of Pixel Peak season will be looking like this, and like last week's episode.
Luckily, the world of the gaming industry continues on in this week's news. First up is an update for Animal Crossing New Horizons. There's a lot of new bugs and fish to catch for April, to mix things up after the game's release a few weeks ago.
In a surprising turn of events, players of Call of Duty Warzone are getting banned by the thousands. Why? You'll have to stay tuned to find out.
And, of course, more events and games are getting delayed because of COVID-19. We know that constant news on the topic can be exhausting, but we will continue to provide relevant information as it's released.
For this week's game review, we'll be mixing things up by bringing on lead producer Tanner Mizelle for this week's game review. If you're interested in Half Genies, you'll want to stick around.
And for this week's analysis, PlayStation Analyst Bianca Bortoluzzi is joining us to share details about the elusive PlayStation 5.
Sounds like fun, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm Sydney Thompson.
And I'm Kristen Lawrence, and we hope you enjoy your stay here on Pixel Peak. With the new month, new fish and bugs are now available to catch in Animal Crossing New Horizons. These new creatures will be available for longer than just the month of April. When you catch a new creature, your character will exclaim, "Yes!" and will appear on the Critterpedia app on the player's Nook phone. This will show you all the bugs and fish you caught and whether or not you've donated them with a little owl icon next to the creature's name. Most of the new bugs and fish will be found in the Northern Hemisphere, and the Southern Hemisphere only got 2 new fish. Among the new critters you are able to catch, there are several new butterflies, moths, and bugs that spawn on trees. If you're lucky, fishing near big shadows could yield a snapping turtle, which are worth 5,000 bells in Nook's Cranny, the in-game store. Every animal has a time and day they're out and about, so be sure to check that out if you're in need of a specific bug or fish.
Call of Duty Warzone, the franchise's take on Battle Royale, is fast-paced combat that makes the game pretty enjoyable. However, the game is only enjoyable if everyone is playing fair. Infinity Ward put out a post last Tuesday revealing that it has banned over 50,000 players that were cheating since the launch of Warzone on March 10th. The post went into detail about the future plans of Ward and detailed how the team bans players through citing that they monitor servers 24/7 in order to investigate data and identify potential hacks and cheats players may use. They also revealed plans to streamline the UI to make it more seamless when reporting other players. Infinity Ward will keep an updated record of accounts banned from Warzone to keep transparency to players on what the company is doing to deter cheating efforts.
With Electronic Entertainment Expo being cancelled along with the press events that accompany the convention, game developers have instead decided to show off upcoming games on streams and digital presentations. However, one company that will not be participating is Bethesda. Last Wednesday, Senior Vice President of Global Marketing and Presentation, Pete Hines, announced via Twitter that the developer would not host a showcase in June. Hines mentioned that although there would be no replacement for the usual Bethesda presentation, there would be news from the studio in the coming months. While it did not have any specific plans regarding a digital presentation, the company follows other companies in the industry that have canceled events due to the current COVID-19 pandemic. After GDC was canceled earlier this year, both Sony and Microsoft put together presentations showcasing the hardware for their upcoming console releases. Meanwhile, ID Software and Bethesda canceled the QuakeCon event for the first time in its 25-year history. While Hines did not give any indication when Bethesda will present new information, we could potentially get more information on Elder Scrolls 6 when we do eventually hear from them.
Epic Games believes its House Party chat application is the victim of a smear campaign and is currently offering $1 million to anyone who can provide proof of the allegation. Since its launch in the Epic Store in 2018, House Party has been accused of harvesting user data and installing spyware on their devices. The allegations claim that Tencent, a 40% owner, is behind it all. This time, House Party is accused of hacking into users' Netflix, PayPal, and Spotify accounts. In response last Monday, House Party tweeted that it was looking at indications that the recent hacking rumors were spread by a paid commercial smear campaign to harm House Party, followed by the promise of a $1 million reward. Epic released a statement saying it found no evidence to suggest a link between House Party and the compromises of other unrelated accounts. Our investigation found that many of the original tweets spreading this claim have been deleted, and we've noticed Twitter accounts suspended, Epic said. It's a disheartening situation for a service like ours that's bringing people much-needed face-to-face social connections and empathy at a critical time. Epic has been accused of harvesting user data in detailed Reddit post last spring, where several users were convinced that Epic Games had installed spyware on their computers. Epic founder and chief executive Tim Sweeney apologized for users' devices being compromised and promised an immediate fix. Epic has been battling negative opinion, but now it looks like the company is offering money to defend its reputation.
QuakeCon is another victim of event cancellation due to the coronavirus, which puts a halt in their 25th anniversary celebration plans. ID Software and Bethesda had discussed how they could move forward with their plans, but with the corona pandemic growing worse, they had to make the hard decision of canceling the event. Their top priority was the health and safety of their employees, vendors, volunteers, sponsors, and players, and they felt gathering was not the right thing to do at this time. While they do not know how the world will be in August, they felt they'd rather be safe than sorry. Bethesda plans to find a way to revive the celebrating spirit for next year's QuakeCon. But in the meantime, Doom fans can enjoy the single-player and online multiplayer modes of ID Software and Bethesda's latest entry into the franchise, Doom Eternal.
Like many events of 2020, Pokemon Play 2020 has been canceled due to the coronavirus. The North American International Championship was scheduled for June, and the World Championship that was to be held in London was planned for August. While those two events have been canceled, the championship series has been suspended until further notice. All matches for all competitive tiers are canceled until further notice as well. The Play Pokemon League covers the trading card game and the video game. It also governs the Premier Challenge for Pokemon Sword and Shield players, and the League Challenge for the ongoing card game players. There will be no championship points awarded for the remainder of the season. However, points will be rolled over into next season's Play Pokemon in 2021. The tournament organizers have written, "We hope that the spirit of friendship and community that are the hallmarks of our amazing fans in these events continue during this challenging time, and that you take care of yourselves and of each other. We can't wait to see you and celebrate with you again." Just like with QuakeCon's cancellation though, players of Pokemon still have the Isle of Armor and online battles to quell their desires for Pokemon content. Cue the confetti! That wraps up this week's news. Now on to producer Tanner Mizelle for this week's game review.
Hey Pixel Peak fans, last time I did a game review was for Sayonara Wild Hearts in Season 3, and I'm back to bring you another game from Apple Arcade's catalog. Join me as I belly dance, transform into animals, and face off against Pirate Risky Boots in this week's game review of Shantae and the Seven Sirens.
Hey! This place is a paradise! whole week! Can you believe it?
Shantae and the Seven Sirens is the 5th entry in the franchise you've probably never heard of, and I'm here to change that. Since her debut on the Game Boy Color in 2002, Shantae has taken a lot of inspiration from the gameplay style of Castlevania and Metroid, but has slowly evolved and, in my opinion, perfected the gameplay style with her latest title. But before we dive into the gameplay, I have to talk about how this game looks. Half Genie Hero, the last Shantae game released in 2016, was the first entry for the franchise in a hand-drawn art style instead of a pixel art one, and Seven Sirens is an effective step up from that. With cutscenes done by legendary animation firm Studio Trigger, several breathtaking hand-illustrated locales both above ground and underground, and even some implementation of cel-shaded 3D graphics, Shantae might be one of the best-looking indie games out there. Although a lot of the in-game animations are definitely computer-assisted, it's not really noticeable when there are several enemies on screen and an incredible soundtrack playing as you whip around. Jake Kaufman, composer for Shovel Knight, has worked on the series in the past, and has definitely taught some composers over at WayForward well for Seven Sirens. I mean, bops have to be playing when Shantae's idle animations involve swaying her hips. Shantae is a half-genie belly dancer, and the main mechanic in most of her games has always been transforming into animals to traverse dungeons. Seven Sirens is no different, but there's a few twists. For one, each animal has 2 distinct actions instead of 1. For example, the newt transformation lets you dash in midair and stick to or walk up and down walls. And instead of animals being mapped to a selection wheel after dancing, they have their own button mapped, so you can transform instantaneously instead of having to wait using the dance animation. Without needing to dance to transform into animals, Shantae's dancing in Seven Sirens instead affects the environment around her. There are dances to reveal hidden items and pathways, heal or rejuvenate people or withered plants, and several more as you continue to work with the other half-genies on the island. This is all made easier when you use a controller, which I highly recommend. Although it's really muscle memory after a bit, Metroidvania games can get really difficult at times, and having to pay attention to where you tap your thumbs takes up more time and is definitely less accurate than if you connect a controller. Luckily, it doesn't take long for this game to get easier. If you're a collector like me and feel the need to get every gem and hit every enemy, enemies drop cards that give you buffs, and you'll be rolling in dough that you can spend on upgrades to your attacks in the shop. Once I got about 20% through the game, I already had the max upgrades for all of my attacks. The real challenge is getting enough health to truly feel invincible. The health system in this game is similar to heart pieces in The Legend of Zelda. Find 4 heart squid, and that's 1 additional heart to your overall health. Also like The Legend of Zelda, enemies can do 1 or several quarter hearts of damage for their attacks, up to 2 full hearts for those really strong boss attacks. Speaking of bosses, the story. This usually takes a back seat to the dungeons in Shantae, but I'm seriously impressed with how much WayForward was able to add in Seven Sirens. Not only are there a ton more characters that stick with you throughout the course of the game, but they are all written and designed distinctly based on the towns they come from. They also help you defeat most of the game's bosses, the Seven Sirens, who all reside underground beneath Area Town. I don't want to give away too much about the story, but I can say that the game keeps it mysterious, and there are definitely some unexpected twists, and it may be one of the most engaging story experiences from Shantae yet. Unfortunately, this game is not for everyone. Metroidvania-style games are high involvement, high energy, and high stakes. And because this game may be one of the only ones to still not support autosaving, I couldn't recommend this game to the average player. But if story is enough to get you through a gaming hardship, you have an affinity for cartoony art styles, or you just like fast-paced action, Shantae and the Seven Sirens is a great game for you. I definitely enjoyed my time playing it, as a fan of the franchise, and Shantae definitely looks and plays the best she ever has.
For such a beautiful game, I'm glad that Shantae and the Seven Sirens was able to hold up the good reputation of the series. I can't wait to see what comes next from Way Forward. That's all I have for this week's game review, so I'll throw it on over to Bryce and Bianca for this week's analysis.
As the next generation of gaming approaches at the end of this year, companies are revealing more details about their upcoming consoles. We talked about Xbox Series X details earlier this season, and now it's PlayStation's turn to take the spotlight. Here with us to talk about the PlayStation 5 is PlayStation Analyst Bianca Bortoluzzi. Thank you for joining us, Bianca.
Thank you, Bryce. It's good to be here virtually.
All right. Well, it's glad to have you back as well. But we're going to hop in right into the questions. So, for the PlayStation 5 plans to launch in holiday 2020, what features can we expect to see that will make it different from the PS4?
So for starters, backwards compatibility with over 4,000 PS4 titles. We can also expect an ultra-high-speed SSD, an integrated custom I/O system, custom AMD GPU with ray tracing, and immersive 3D audio. So we can basically expect less loading screen because of that high-speed SSD. The audio will be better than ever before, and higher GPU means better graphics, especially with the ray tracing. And ray tracing means that copies how light moves in real life, basically. So water, grass, hair, stuff like that will just look even better.
Well, that's good. What are some interesting and new aspects in the DualShock 5 controllers for the next-gen console?
So something we can expect, aesthetically speaking, it doesn't seem like they're going to be too different. You're still going to have the same overall look. However, we can expect haptic feedback technology on both the triggers and the grips. So basically, there will be different resistance levels to stimulate things like shooting a bow and arrow or firing a gun. And you'll also have it on the grips so that the vibration isn't just on the pad, but also on the grips itself. And there's also a possibility of back buttons being integrated into the PS5 DualShock controller, but because of how they released a attachable back button earlier for PS4 DualShock 4 controllers. And there's also a possibility of having a built-in microphone, as well as 3 people being able to play on one controller at once. So overall, not too much of a difference in looks, but we can expect some differences in gameplay.
Currently, they are stating that the PS5 will be backwards compatible with the majority of PS4 titles. Do you think this should be a priority on the production of the new console?
So personally speaking, I've been playing video games for years. I'm 21 now, and I was like 4 years old when I picked up my first PlayStation controller, probably. And I know a lot of PS4 players that have always had a problem with this backwards compatibility thing. They couldn't play PS3 games on the PS4, even though Xbox One could play Xbox 360 games. And while I do think this is a cool feature, and do think it's about time Sony stepped up and did this, they are also not including indie games, which really kind of screws over a lot of indie developers and also people who enjoy playing indie games like me. So it's just it is something that's interesting and it's cool. 4,000 titles, that's awesome, but it's also taking out a really large, although niche, community in the gaming realm of PlayStation.
That's for sure. From what we have seen, what are the differences between the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5?
So there aren't a lot of differences internally. They're more similar than they ever have been, actually. One difference, though, is that the Xbox Series X has 12 teraflops, while the PS4 has 10.3, and the Xbox Series X also has 1 terabyte SSD, while the PS4 has 825 gigabytes SSD. There aren't any huge differences besides that, and like I said, mostly everything internally is the same. So, I mean, obviously, besides like aesthetics and how the console will look, that's all we have is the specs.
That's for sure. Well, my last question for you tonight is, what do you hope to see out of the new PlayStation 5?
So I hope to see something that doesn't feel like the PS4 or the PS4 Pro. Like I said earlier, I love my PS4. However, we've been waiting a really long time for the PS5, and I am an avid Sony fan. I've never touched an Xbox in my life, so something great with everything running as smoothly as they've talked about. I'm really excited for this SSD, especially in the GPU. I am a PC fan as well, but I don't have a PC at my apartment up at school, so I don't get to play it as much. And so to be able to play games that seem just so much higher quality is really exciting. And I'm also excited because they're going to try to make it cheaper than consoles usually go for. So hopefully it won't hurt my wallet as much as I'm expecting it to hurt my wallet. And yeah, besides that, I mean, I'm hoping to see awesome games. I'm hoping developers will take this in stride and really make games that will look beautiful for, I'm no hater, so both the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5, I feel like this is really like a turning point for gaming consoles.
Well, that's really great to hear. It looks like there's a lot to be excited for. Maybe these cool features on the new consoles at the end of the year will make up for the stress everybody's feeling right now. Thank you so much for joining us, Bianca. That's all we have for this week's analysts. So I'm going to pass it on to Sydney and Kristen to wrap up this week's show.
And that wraps up this week's episode. Thanks for joining us for another remote production.
Although we have episodes coming out every week, you can keep up to date with us online by liking and following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at PixelPeak@TV.
We'll be streaming new episodes at 3 p.m. on Wednesdays on App TV's YouTube channel, watchapptv.com, Skybest channels 20 and 1020, Spectrum channel 198, and on App State's campus television channel 23.3.
And we couldn't have brought you today's episode without our incredible crew. Thanks to writers Jalen Curtin and Rebecca Larson, PlayStation Analyst Bianca Bortoluzzi, and producers Tanner Mizelle, Elise Taylor, and Sydney Thompson for bringing us another episode in this pandemic.
Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope you enjoyed your stay here
on Pixel Peak.